Hi and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Spread the word of SCW with a friend. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Would love to hit that milestone. We're going to be talking Impact Wrestling for you today, and we've got 10 ideas for Impact Wrestling, the Slammiversary 2020 pay-per-view this year of potential debuts or returns from the WWE releases or other names that have been pitched forward as well. So I've got 10 different ideas going to go through you now. Going to go from 1 to 10. Some are probably more likely than others. A lot of fantasy booking is in amongst this. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you'd like to see. What of these ideas you like? Do you think it'd make a difference or not? Let me know in the comments below. But without further ado, let's go on the first one. And I think it's the most obvious one. The Slammiversary main event. Now, of course, we have lost Tessa Blanchard. She was fired and stripped of the Impact Wrestling Championship. And of course, Michael Elgin is no longer part of the company either. We've got a 5-way here with 2 slots missing. Potentially turn it into a fatal 4-way. You could keep it as a 5-way, but you've got a chance here to put 2 new names in the main event of a pay-per-view. Now remember, everything has already been recorded up until Slammiversary. So unless they want to do something especially on Zoom or just throw in the announcement, this person in the company we think has earned the position that's already here, they could do that. But it'd be a great way to bring names in. Could you imagine not knowing who it's going to be for the superstars in the ring and the music of, say, Trouble, 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 and EC3 makes his return. Maybe an Eric Young makes his return. Mike Kanellis could be in that position. Why not see Miro, aka Rusev, maybe making his debut at Slammiversary in the main event? I think potentially it could work really well. The only thing I would say with this is that I'd be more in preference of former world champion or champions rather than a complete debutant, because Impact has taken a lot of slack in the past for letting people come in on their debut, just walk in, win the championship and go away, especially if they've had no history with the company. And here's why I think it makes a bit of a difference. If they have history with the company and they'll make a difference and they're seen as a big deal in Impact, I don't think it's as bad. And that's just my opinion on that. You may disagree with me. Let me know, as I say, in the comments. So I think EC3 is a good shout. I think that Eric Young would be a good shout. I think that Mike Kanellis would be a good shout for these roles potentially. But so we'll have to wait and see what is going to happen. But maybe a former world champion in someone like Bully Ray has been teased of coming back as well. I'm not sure of the situation with that. I mean, I've heard that recently, last I knew of, he was with Ring of Honor. So I don't know the situation there. But his graphic has been shown in these videos as a potential someone who could be turning up at Slammiversary as a former world champion. So it's very interesting. So that's the first one that I would look at. Number 2, we mentioned Bully Ray, the return of Aces and Eights. Well, I think personally it's a very exciting prospect. It's kind of been teased to the point where we feel it just might happen. D'Lo Brown was actually teased about the Aces and Eights stable. He got out of his chair after being teased this past week at Impact, and it revealed the waistcoat of the former Aces and Eights stable. Of course, he was part of that. The negative towards this is that a lot of the former members, of course, are not part of Impact Wrestling. Some of them are well into the later stages of career or retired at this point, so none of them probably would be returning. But you could get a kind of fresh look Aces and Eights or a trimmed down version of the stable for new members to join in later. What if Bully Ray did come back to be along with here D'Lo Brown, who could be mentoring the group? What if someone like Wes Briscoe, who has actually tweeted as saying that he is actually looking to get back into wrestling with one of the major companies and said, would anyone like to have him back? What if he is on his way back to Impact Wrestling? We'll have to wait and see with it, but there's certainly other ones that are free agents. Yes, in the latter part of his career, Ken Anderson has been part with NWA. What if he's due to make a return to Impact? You never know. It would be interesting to see, and of course the most interesting part of this is one Doc Gallows. Yes, formerly Luke Gallows of the OC, the Good Brothers from WWE, and of course that are part of the Bullet Club in New Japan. He is expected to be a part of the company as long as Carl Anderson. Wouldn't it be interesting seeing them part of it? I think that would be making the most sense here. If you're going to make an Aces and Eights stable and you want to try and make a newer version of it, if you have Bully Ray on board, fantastic. D'Lo's there, of course he's already there, and you have the Good Brothers. That's a great starting point for that Aces and Eights stable. And if there's new members to come in at a later date, as the way they've done it previously, I think it's a bit of nostalgia, but it could be a bit of fun, and I think it's something that could really work and add some buzz, because because Aces and Eights was one of the most popular storylines in Impact history. So, I mean, a lot of people would say that maybe the way it was revealed and the way it went later down the line, maybe not so successful, but certainly the early buzz got a lot of people talking, and I do think it would bring some eyes back to Impact Wrestling. You'd have to tell me what you think of it, but I certainly think it could be a goer. The next one, well, we mentioned about stables. Let's talk about another one that was heavily rumoured actually until very recently, which was the return of Team Canada. There was rumours that Michael Elgin was going to be leading the stable, but of course he's no longer with Impact Wrestling. So we'll talk about the other members that were supposed to be part of that stable. Was it the returning Eric Young, if that's going to be the case, and Petey Williams? Well, I still think that they could make a good go of Team Canada, those two guys. I mean, previously were part of the original Team Canada stable back in the noughties, and they could work it as a tag team. There's no reason why they couldn't do that. But why not make the stable stronger? Because there's two creditable Canadian wrestlers that are Canadian proud in amongst Impact Wrestling, who even during the pandemic refused to leave Canada. You know who I'm talking about, the tag team champions, the North. Now, if you were to add them into this, you've got a 4-man stable, and if you do push Eric Young a bit harder than perhaps what we would have done, I think Eric Young would have been the number 2 in the stable had it have been under the original rumoured guidelines. If he was the guy to lead the stable, you've got the tag team champions amongst the stable, and Petey Williams can go over the X Division. You've kind of got the whole area filled here with this stable, and I think it could work. I'm not sure if it would screen where Eric Young would win the Impact Championship, but he's certainly been in around that area before, and I think as a stable this could work pretty well. And as well, I mean, let's say Aces and Eights did come back, we've got 2 major stables in Impact Wrestling that could feud with each other, and no doubt Aces and Eights, although it was a heel stable before, I think for nostalgia reasons and how over it would be, there is a potential that they would probably have to start on a babyface run. I'm not so sure, but maybe they could, and they could go against Team Canada. It's just an idea out there, but certainly would make things interesting. Well, I've mentioned the Good Brothers, and I think that they have a lot to offer for part number 4 because they are the most likely, according to the dirt sheets, to have already signed with Impact Wrestling and are almost certs, if you want, for Slammiversary in some format, whether they just turn up or not turn up. Now, we mentioned there if it was Ace and Eights versus Team Canada, idea number 1, well, they could come out after the North's Tag Team Championship maybe victory. They seem to be feuding with Ken Shamrock at the minute. Be interesting if Shamrock has a mystery partner, by the way, for Slammiversary. It's certainly a little small idea that could bring someone in. But imagine afterwards that they think they've beaten everyone, there's no one to beat, and the Good Brothers turn up. That would be a great way to bring them in and put a storyline going forward. But speaking of the Good Brothers there, I mean, also, they have been linked to, they've signed deals with Impact. I've been doing filming for Impact Plus, but also in their contracts will actually have the ability to still compete for New Japan Wrestling. I wonder if there is a bigger plot with this, because if they go back to New Japan Pro Wrestling and are once again involved with the Bullet Club, could this be Impact Wrestling throwing an olive branch out to try and get a working partnership later down the line with New Japan Pro Wrestling? I would have ruled out. Could you imagine members of the Bullet Club coming into the Impact Zone? It is certainly something that I would be interested in seeing if it's a possibility. There have been rumours in previous past that New Japan have not wanted to do business with Impact Wrestling over previous ways that they've booked what turned out to be big New Japan stars later in time. Okada being one of them that was apparently very badly booked. I must admit, they were before really my real times of really keeping up to date with Impact Wrestling, so I can't really comment too much, but I believe that some superstars were badly booked back then and given not such great gimmicks. So I think that's one there's been a hesitance to continually work. But I mean, for me, if they can get things going again, so much has changed in a number of years and Impact are doing great things now. Wouldn't it be great if we could get that? I mean, it's something that's probably a dream at this point, but I think it's something that could work. There has been talk as well that both Anderson and the Gallows could be starting their own wrestling school as well, maybe their own form of promotion. Maybe it could be an under promotion that could develop new talent for Impact. There's something on that as well. We'll have to wait and see, but there's definitely lots of potential with the Good Brothers of what you could do with them. So I'm very excited. If they're meant to be coming in, Doc Gallows, Carl Anderson, I think they could bring a lot to the table, and I think that it certainly is one of the more interesting things of what they could do with Impact Wrestling. Let's look at number 5, and this is a collective invasion storyline, the classic go-to, something that's always a potential that could happen. Imagine if all the release talents come in, say they've signed about 8 or 9 guys here, come in and all take over in an invasion style storyline as one massive unit against Impact Wrestling, almost like a takeover if you want. And rather than saying that it's WWE, you could just say we know where they've come from. They've been in the same company, they've all united, and they all want to take over Impact Wrestling. And it's almost like an NWO style or Nexus style, if you look back at the classic WWE or WCW storylines, that they could bring that angle together. It's certainly something that you could then get your 2 major sides here, Impact Wrestling against the released talents as a storyline. I'm not so sure what I feel about this, but I certainly feel it's a potential. The reason I'm not so sure about this is because if you have all of them come in and they were kind of part of the catering crew somewhere else and they're already immediately taking over all of Impact Wrestling, it does partly make that roster look weaker from Impact than perhaps stronger. I mean, they could perhaps get the win at the end, but at the same time, it kind of puts and says that Impact is a lower standard than WWE, and I don't think that is a message that wants to be sent out. As I said, there's been previous criticisms when they've done that before, bringing talents in and making them world champion on night 1. I think if you did it with a whole roster's worth of guys, I think it does look slightly damaging, but certainly is an idea and something they could do. And of course, if they are going to do it that way, the best thing to do is to try and make this go all the way through to at least Bound for Glory and further if they can make a really connection with the storyline and make it a red hot angle. But speaking of takeovers, I really like the idea of what I've come up with for number 6 alternatively, and I'd like to see your thoughts on this one. How about TNA Originals coming back, siding with Moose to then try and take over Impact Wrestling in a TNA versus Impact storyline? That's right, a different form of takeover, but company within company. We've had the 2 World Championships. Maybe we could get a crowning of a brand new Impact World Champion at the end of the evening. Say it's Eddie Edwards, a trusting, reliable, steady pair of hands of Impact, Mr. Impact, but instead the former Mr. Impact Wrestling, who now pronounces himself Mr. TNA, the TNA World Champion, Moose, comes to the ring with a brand new set of superstars who were once in TNA, siding by him and taking over the company in the same form of, if you want, Nexus style, NWO style takeover, but instead it's the history of TNA against the current of Impact Wrestling. Now for me, this has a lot more eyes to the prize, and I think would draw a lot of heat to it. And I think it could be a real red hot angle in the fact that people will actually go, well, this is the same company fighting against each other, and which one is going to prevail? Is it the name of TNA or is it the name of Impact Wrestling? You can then have ideas of maybe where classic TNA matches are brought back, if they can perhaps win their takeover, and at the same time with Impact Wrestling, there'll be a way you can actually merge championships or make new champions, separate brands, do all sorts of different ideas you can do with this. And I think that with this storyline, you could actually make it last years if done correctly, not necessarily just months. So there's lots of different ideas that could be done with it, but I really like the idea of a TNA versus Impact Wrestling rivalry. We've had so many of the former TNA stars turn up in the company recently. We've had TNA throwbacks. Apparently, the TNA rating of the special was done really well, and they want more TNA programming on Impact Wrestling. I think that this would be a great way to go, and certainly, I think it would bring some old school fans back, if I'm being brutally honest, because a lot of people look at Impact and say that its best days perhaps were behind it. I think that Impact is a sleeper promotion. People seem to not give it the credit that it deserves, particularly the last 2 to 2.5 years worth of booking have been incredibly strong to what was before, and I think that they can continue the momentum, and what they're doing here for Slammiversary has provided a lot of excitement, and a storyline like this I think could not only just give them some carried momentum, but I think would bring a lot of the viewers back that were there before, and I think a lot of them would stick around. Alternatively, for number 7, we could do something in a similar vein, but a slightly different. How about Moose refusing to let go of the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, claiming he's the best champion of all time, to actually get a rivalry with returning TNA Originals? That's right, EC3, Eric Young, we've been over them previously, Bully Ray, all coming back in, and they can all have a problem with Moose and trying to get the good name back of TNA off of Moose and saying that perhaps he's damaging the history, the legacy, the reputation of what there was before. And it's something to certainly keep interest of Moose, of what he's doing, because Moose has been that kind of guy that a lot of people will probably say, why has he just not been the main event? He seems to have always been someone that is just under, but has always had a storyline that's been quite interesting. Rather than going for the championship, he was going last year for Legends. He was then proving he was better at other sports than other people. Now he's brought back the TNA Heavyweight Championship after beating a lot of originals at the early part of the year, including Rhino, Rob Van Dam, etc. And now he's got new TNA originals to come back, perhaps younger guys that were maybe part of the company before, or certainly with EC3 anyway. But with Bully Ray coming back as well, potentially that would be exciting. Eric Young, there's a lot of things you could do there to make that championship almost continue relevance and continue storyline, because otherwise, if Moose is beating perhaps a lot of the all politely jobber or random guys now that he's going from TNA history. I mean, Suicide was never a world champion. Hernandez was a good hand back in the day, but certainly his best days are behind him now. We perhaps could do with some bigger names if Moose is continuing on to try and carry on with the TNA Heavyweight Championship. One thing we've not talked about is actually the Knockouts division, and I think that needs to be brought in because actually we've got a very exciting couple of matches been announced. We've got a Knockouts Gauntlet, which is an easy way to bring a new debutant in at Slammiversary, depending if there is one or two. And we've also got the Knockouts Championship as well match with Dianna Preiser challenging Jordynne Grace, which I'm really looking forward to. I think that's got potential to be match of the night all over. But I have a feeling, and I'm just going to throw the name out there, that I think we could see Tanara Kanzi come in and debut here, because she is one of the NXT release talents. And we mentioned about release talents. We sort of talk about a lot of the main rosters. We've not touched on the Cassius Onos and other people. And one of the top ones from NXT that was released, and from a female perspective, was Tanara Kanzi. And I think she could add a lot, because she's added tweets that she misses wrestling. And I think that she could have a good partnership with Dianna Preiser. Both have history together with being both in NXT, and it certainly would help them as a partnership. And with the Knockouts getting a lot of two women kind of teams going on at the moment, we've seen a lot of it with perhaps Tasha Steelz along with Kiera Hogan. We've got Neva and Havoc as well as a team. And if we have Tanara and Dianna as well, you're starting to really build together this tag team division, and maybe the Knockouts tag titles may make a return. I mean, if Bully was to come back, what would be the chances that we could get Velvet Sky, maybe Angelina Love, maybe we get the Beautiful People back in there as well? Certainly were definitely reigning Knockouts tag team champions for quite a lot of those titles spell. So that would definitely be good for nostalgia purposes and good for putting new teams over. There are other teams as well, like Kylie Ray and Susie. We've even got, I think, as well, like Rosemary and Taya Valkyrie kind of been sort of working together on and off in recent times as well, although I do think there probably will be a split there somewhere down the line. But you can see that there's enough teams to make a Knockouts tag team division, and I'm going to throw out there, I reckon that Tanara will debut. So that is my Knockouts debut prediction for you right now for Slammiversary, and I think that maybe she'll help Dianna win the Knockouts Championship. I think that's great for just an instant start, or maybe Dianna doesn't get the job done and perhaps a beatdown's done after the match, and you've got yourself a new team going forward in there, two girls watching each other's backs, and it'll be interesting to see where it takes forward in Impact Wrestling. We're going to go now for number 9, and we're near the end now, but this one I think is potentially a likely one. Heath Slater will be coming in, and I expect him to reform his tag team partnership with Rhino. Rhino's already teased it on Impact Wrestling already that he has a tag team partner, and he expects to hopefully be teaming with him again soon. So I would say that this hopefully is a lock, and that Heath Slater will be coming in. I'd like to see it. I think that the tag team division is one of the weaker parts currently of Impact Wrestling. And like we say, if we get the Good Brothers in of, Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, and then we get Heath Slater to join Rhino, we've got two teams there added already. Because politely, as good as the tag teams that perhaps we've got, how many times have we seen the North versus the Rascals? I've seen it a number of times. I feel that I perhaps don't need to see it again. We need some fresh teams in there, and that would really help things out if we get some of the suggested stables or partnerships together. But I mean, as well, I would like to see Heath Slater come in and almost have the well, rather than Drew McIntyre, let's go Impact style for you and Drew Galloway. Wouldn't it be great if Heath Slater was to come in and really want to stand out and be like a Drew Galloway was, and almost use it as an inspiration of how he was let go from the company and wants to better himself and put himself towards a main event spot. How he's been put down for too long, spent too long in catering. Remember, he's got kids and he's ready to show now what he can really do. Now he's got a fresh start in a new company. Maybe it turns on Rhino. Maybe it leads to some sort of rivalry with them two further down the line, and maybe it pushes Heath Slater towards certainly an upper mid-card role within Impact Wrestling. I think the safe bet is the tag team, but I certainly wouldn't mind that option either. It would be good to see Heath Slater get a real chance, because I think that the guy has got some goods there. It would be nice to see him given a fair opportunity, and hopefully, if he does join Impact, he will get that. Last but not least, let's talk about one I think is probably the most far-fetched of all the ideas that I've come up with, but still I think would be a fun one if it's possible. Zack Ryder is a free agent and there's no confirmation yet where he's going. I suppose many have felt perhaps he would be most likely to go to AEW. I'm going to picture him an idea here of going to Impact Wrestling and why I think it would be good for him. Do you remember his YouTube series about 10 years ago where he got massively over on the internet? He became the internet champion, in fact, and had his own series. Wouldn't it be great if he could bring something like that to Impact Wrestling, almost like the Long Island Z story in a different format on YouTube, where he could almost have his form of a series like Being the Elite for Impact Wrestling, and they could also air episodes on Impact Plus. They could have a form of an internet championship. It would give the company all sorts of different ideas of what you could do making the series, maybe championship matches online, maybe, it gives a different olive branch to the company in general, something that makes them stand out, gives them something a little bit extra. And you have to remember the famous words of Cody, of what he said about Zack Ryder previously, is the fact that when you look at Zack, he got over once, he could get over again under his real name, which I believe is Matt Carzona, which will be his name going forward. I'd like to see it. Maybe he brings Curt Hawkins in involved as well. Maybe we have another tag team. Maybe they continue on with some form of podcasting. Maybe they continue on with a gimmick as well, where they've got with, their action figures they've got going as well. There's lots of different variables of what they've added together and what they sort of do outside of wrestling. I think that they could be an absolute steal if used correctly and brought in from Impact Wrestling. But I'd like to know your thoughts below. So that's my 10 ideas for you there of what perhaps we could have for debuts, potential returns for Impact Wrestling and Slammiversary, and what roles they could play in the company and what they could be doing going forward, perhaps leading to storylines, stables, teams and more going as we go towards the end of the summer and into the start of the winter season towards Bound for Glory. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below if you're a fan of any of these ideas. What ideas would you like to bring to the table? What would you like to see happen? Perhaps you want to see Miro, aka Rusev, come in and just become dominant. Maybe we have a Miro Day and a new Impact World Champion from him. Maybe Slammiversary has a nice little twist and a different turn with TNA originals that you'd like to see, or maybe, just maybe, we don't see anything of the sorts and we just get lots of reveals throughout the night. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But that's all from me anyway. Make sure to check out other Impact Wrestling videos that I have posted. Let me know your thoughts and comments. Please share with a friend as well. Spread the word of SCW, particularly if you're an Impact fan on this particular video. But of course, there are other videos done on WWE, AEW, and much, much more. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time here on YouTube. Have a great day. You've been watching SCW, the wrestling channel.